Hey guys, Matt, IronTrap Garage, and among the many things that we are juggling at all times, I've been in the background working with my buddy Jeff on this Marshman Supercharger that we did a video on a little while ago that we found. Basically, years ago, I found a body just like this. I have two of these actually now, but I found a body just like this that was the back half, back portion, the center section, and no front snout or rotor. I recently, I guess it was last year, we found a pretty much complete Marshman Supercharger with another body that was the same way. A lot of the pieces are not drilled. This particular one was at some point run that I have here, but the other ones are basically not drilled and were never run. And they were both missing the front snout and the rotor. So we were trying to figure out how could we make basically three complete Marshman Superchargers. So my buddy Jeff, he does a ton of woody reproduction parts. So he does a lot of design work on the computer, recreating pieces of wood for woodies that are obsolete or maybe people can't find or are very difficult to make. Because of that, he is quite talented with modeling and drawing on the computer and then 3D printing samples and then creating the real thing, actually making it out of wood. In this case, we're attempting to make the real thing again out of aluminum. It was very important to me that we made a part that was actually cast. I looked into it with a number of different people, and it wouldn't have been very difficult to scan the front snout off the complete one I have and put it in a CNC and have it made out of a piece of billet. But at the end of the day, it's still going to be a piece of billet, and it's not really going to look the same when everything's together. So I thought it'd be fun and also important to go through the process of recreating the part, having it cast, and putting it together so that it pretty much looks like it would be as it would have been done originally. So Jeff's on his way over. We're going to bring all the pieces in. I believe he got the front snouts from the foundry. So we're going to talk about some of the process and what he did and show the parts and talk about the next steps. So let's get started. All right, so nice little surprise. Jeff has been helping us with some super secret Marshman Supercharger stuff. And I didn't know you had almost a whole one prototyped here.
Yeah, we're working on that. It still needs more refinement, which you and I will talk about off camera.
Right.
We managed to 3D scan the rear portion.
Oh, killer.
So we have that. There's some minor things that need to be done to this before we take it to the foundry if we decide to do that. Mm-hmm. On the nose piece, this was reverse engineered and designed so it's got material here as well as here, so that when you do machining to it, you can get it to the actual size. So it's actually made oversized a bit.
Right.
The intake itself, you see that I modeled all the ports and whatnot, but this isn't actually what the foundry needs to make the part. So you and I have to again talk a little bit more about if we're going to pursue that anymore.
Because it could be, you were saying, because of the core, like, or the plugs or whatever.
We have to split this. So when it's cast, it would actually go in the cope and drag. The portions of the foundry would work with, and we need to split it in here.
Oh wow!
And then we need to make cores for each one of these things. So what you're looking at here is, you know, a 3D printed model of the part that I reverse engineered. But
so if they split it there, you would have to weld it.
No. It would come out solid, but what's going to happen is
there's a parting line.
This is solid now. We have to make the void. This has to be a void inside the foundry pattern or inside the mold. So what we have to do is actually make solid parts where all these holes are.
Oh.
And to be able to get those solid pieces called cores out, we have to split this in a certain way. And I've talked through that with the folks at the foundry, and I think we know how to do that. It's just whether we're willing and able to invest the time,
the money and time,
to make all that happen.
Money's probably the biggest thing.
Yeah, I mean, because I already have this model. Going to create the core. To create the cores is not that big a deal. Mm-hmm. It's just that we're going to have more development costs in place. In this one, for example, there was a little core here in the center, but when you do some machine work to this thing, you're going to clean that up, and that's inconsequential in the terms of like what we're developing.
Right, yeah.
On this, there's a bigger core for the rotor, and then there's multiple individual cores. And we wouldn't be making the actual cores. We would be making something that would then make the cores
Right.
for you. So that's a little, again, we'll talk about that off camera. This guy also has somewhat of a complicated core because of the design here. We could take some liberties and make some minor changes to that.
To make it easier to...
Yeah, we need this.
Yep.
But this thing has to be, we have to take this into software. We have to add some material here, and here, and maybe here, so that when you got it from the foundry, you could take it and clean it up.
Okay, so you can get it true on the mill.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Just like we did on these guys. These are actually bigger than they're supposed to be by
Right. And then
fractions, you know.
But these are the pieces. The missing... They're heavy, man.
Yeah.
Heavy son of a guns.
Yeah. So
That's cool.
This is your nose. So you'll have what, at least 3 that look complete.
All right, so this is the other half for everybody that's not familiar. When I bought the 2 other Marshmans, I wanted them because they were rare, but the key was the one was complete. So my end goal was, so what I got was this piece here with a single carburetor in the rear half. The other one I have, which is somewhere else, also a single carburetor and unmachined. This one was obviously run and was on a car. So what I'd want to do is, one of the unmachined ones I got last was a 2 carburetor, which I didn't know existed. So I swapped the guts in just for funsies, and that's what you're seeing there. So there's some used parts and new parts all together. So the problem was the other 2 didn't have a front snout, and this is our test here.
So there's our front snout, and you can see, man, look
Fits
at that.
together pretty
Nice.
good.
Nice.
So this one's actually been machined or whatever all the way on the bottom, whereas this one it has not been machined, so there's a lip there in this centerpiece. So
You know, Matt, I'm just looking now. You can even see here the amount of material that's left in this area, and then go to your original one. Look
Oh,
how much
wow.
material was removed. So that's also indicative of the way that we were cast, because the material hit the center of that thing and kind of spreads. So it's not surprising to me that it's like that, but that's kind of even interesting. The fact
that's
that different.
yeah, and that's got that big bevel on it where they must have taken that off, I'm guessing. I don't know.
Yeah, I think so.
But that's
And even here, look how
thin that
thin
is.
that got. And this one, it's probably hard to see in film, but
Not quite as thin.
not quite as thin. So
That's neat. Well, they were probably, and this was, well, the other thing is this was its separate pattern
yeah,
because,
for sure.
but
It's a dual carb deal.
but they both say Model F. They don't have a number stamped in any of them, which is pretty neat.
You know what else I'm noticing now? On this rear snout, we've got some sort of boss, I guess, would that hold something in? And we've got a flathead.
Well, that's just, I mean, oil just so unless that was for an oil return.
No, or does that do something here?
Oh, oil's the bearing.
Maybe.
Yeah, you're probably
But
right.
if you go to the other one, we don't have that.
So that was never, because that was a
Never finished.
fresh
That's the
cast
original
piece.
one.
Yeah.
That's the as cast. So, yeah, and between you and me, man, I was a little worried when I picked this up from the foundry that, you know, maybe the quality of the casting wasn't so great. But as you look at some of this stuff, I mean, the back of this thing's it's not perfect.
And that's probably anything they're doing is just as good or better. I mean, their quality is I mean, once that part gets a little dirty,
It'll look just
they'll all look the same. Yeah. So
That's cool.
that's really neat. Yeah, I mean, that's got the same kind of finish,
Yep.
you know, that all these other ones do. So that's really neat. But that's cool that this actually, I mean, you already knew it was going to, but
Sure.
that is very close to fitting there. So that's going to be some of the steps, is transferring these bowl holes, making everything flat.
Yep.
But I mean, it's on our very true wood, 100-year-old wood ledge here.
We gotta mount this thing to a block. Is what we gotta do.
Yeah, definitely.
That's what we gotta do. The bummer, and I think we talked about this off camera, is we're gonna have to take this and bolt it to the mill, fixture up, and identify where this location is. Then take it all back apart, assemble some things.
Yeah.
So we can so we can create this hole, because it's not just a hole. There's a bearing that rides in a
Yes.
boss or in a recess, I guess you want to call it.
Yeah.
So
It's involved.
It's not like, you know.
We don't just drill a few holes and throw it together.
Exactly. Now, the nice thing is, this was 1940s technology.
Yeah.
And we still have 1940s technology in your shop.
Yes,
right?
yes, we do.
So we have the capability.
any tools they probably use to make that, we have access to quite easily.
Right.
But it's neat to have these. The only thing that we ended up doing, I guess, back to taking liberties, is this has an offset generator tensioner bracket, and I guess that was kind of hard to make, and we kind of decided it was unnecessary. So for, I guess, ease of modeling, we ended up deleting that. Because our goal is to make them fairly complete if they wanted to be run. So.
Well, and then the other part you have to keep in mind is, you know, the way we've done it, we have to machine the back and the front of this to make it correct. But then if we went to the trouble of creating this generator bracket, which puts this ugly generator in the wrong spot anyway, right? Then we've got multiple more surfaces that have to be right, have to be true. So by eliminating that, I think when you and I talked about this way back in the beginning, it just seemed like it was extra work that wasn't necessary for the purpose of this project.
Yeah, I think because we're just trying to make the other two complete.
Right.
If we didn't have this one, we wouldn't know any better.
Correct.
And I would think it would be that way. So right. I think they're okay. Really, I'm going to try and get the one complete original one on a car eventually.
Right.
These other two, they may never see a car. They may, I don't know. So.
Right.
But this is super cool to see the process because I am.
And just so everybody understands, you know, the nose, this was something that I reversed engineered from drawings, and you had loaned me the Supercharger. Probably 100 people walked through my shop and didn't know it was under my desk.
Good.
Last 3 months.
Super secret.
This one, an engineer that I work with, Tom, he and we scanned this, and then Tom printed it for me.
Nice.
So that's, again, this needs a little more work because we need to go back into software, add some material in different places to make it. So that we can cast it and then machine it. And then the body, that was developed basically off of your snout and your rear mount. I started modeling that, and I took some liberties. I didn't delete the bosses that Marshman did not carry through. So they knocked that off and added their logo in the middle. I just left it because I know this is iteration number 1. If we decide to go in this direction, we're gonna do this. We're gonna 3D print the whole thing at least one more time.
And my thing was, I didn't want to make, if we do this, I didn't want to make a fake, so to speak. Right. So if it looks like this and it's just our version of that, it's its own piece of speed equipment now instead.
Right.
So I don't want, my thing was nowadays in the like 70s, 80s, 90s, there was a bunch of rare speed equipment. Like I have a piece up there, an intake. Very, very rare, but it was reproduced, and nowadays at swap meets, guys they're posing them as the real thing for big money. So I didn't want to make a pattern and sell these. So hopefully the only 3 made stay with me, and if we make something else, it's our own version.
It's your own thing. Yeah, it's your own thing. So, and then just as an aside, just so you're aware, just like yourself and myself, Tom is a bit of a bootstrapper as well. So I said, look, man, let's do this as cheaply as we can.
Yep.
So, he's like, I got this ugly blue plastic we can 3D print it out of. I got a little bit of gray. He's like, let me just use up the junk.
He threw it all together in a stew.
So
and
just like the rest of us would do.
Yep.
Let's just make it as quick and cheap as we can. And that's what we did here. So and
Very
I think
cool.
That's important on everything you and I do.
Yeah.
And it's really important for this project as well.
And this is the process for woody stuff. You do a lot of the same kind of process.
Yeah, so the 3D scanning, this is actually, there's a lot more geometry here than maybe some of the wagon parts that I've made, but the process is the same. We take the wagon part and we 3D scan it so we can run it through software and generate code for the CNC machine. This actually, you might be able to do this on my CNC mill. I didn't think about that.
Uh-oh.
We might be able to machine this out of billet. We don't want that, but
I'd prefer the cast look, but it's an option potential.
And, before you come upstairs, we were talking about like the finish on this, how it's kind of crummy. It's kind of rough. Well, the reality is we solve all that later on with the foundry.
Yep.
However, the reality is we could do body work to this. We could smooth it. We could make it nice
Perfect,
and perfect.
yeah.
But I don't think that's what they had when that
No,
was made.
yeah, I mean, yeah, you look at the casting and the finish on this, it's pretty rough. Even we were discussing like the bottom, you're talking about machining the bottom of it.
Yeah.
And we were looking at what, like that was run on a car, that surface there. And it looks like they just put it on a belt sander.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, again, the gasket's going to take care of a lot of sins. But you can see even on your new old stock version here, there's a lip. So
That hasn't
this
been
needs to be
machined.
machined.
Yeah.
In fact, there's probably where the sprue, when this was cast,
Ah, okay.
that's probably where it was poured. They had cores going in all these holes.
Yep.
And yeah, and this actually needs what we would call in the industry second, third op. It needs to be surfaced. So
Back here, it's,
Yeah.
that's tall of that.
Yep.
That's odd.
So
'cause
this one may need some work as well.
unless it's got some slop in the
That
holes.
could very well too.
Yeah, there you
I
can,
did have it off and on a couple times.
everything has slop that you can adjust it maybe.
Yeah, yeah, right.
But very cool. Well, so the next steps we're going to work on is getting some of these pieces machined. The big thing is this, the rotor in this has a bunch of damage right here to the threaded portion where the pulley would go. So we have to decide if we can repair that, or we've been talking about making 2 new rotors as well to have 3 complete ones.
Right.
And you had some ideas for the rotor.
Yeah, I think I'm not going to give away our secret, but I think we have a way to do that that's pretty novel and I think would work rather well.
So that's the idea. So I'm trying to get one of these eventually together. So I'm probably gonna switch gears and try and get this one fixed so that the rest of the machining done and things repaired so that this could be a functioning unit. And then we can take out the information we need off of these pieces when we have it apart. So, but that's the goal, is to put one of these hopefully on my Model A Coupe maybe someday and make it even more awesome. So, well, thank you, Jeff. Appreciate the help. This is step one or two of many steps. But this was a long process. Jeff had a lot of, I don't know how many times before you took the blower from me. 3.
Yeah, we printed this a couple, 2-3 times just to make sure that it was what we thought it was. And then, of course, you and I are about an hour apart, so it's kind of hard to like, okay, I'll run up on a evening and we'll see what it looks like and try to figure it out. And then, oh shoot, I forgot one detail. Well, let's get together another week, and we're both busy. And
So,
but it was fun for me. It's cool to do this kind of stuff. It's a little different than the woody wagon stuff that I normally am involved with. So,
but
thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, well, I like being able to do I like to see this process because I know nothing about the technology side of what people were able to do with this stuff. So I'm psyched to see that we went from this thing to that to now the real thing, heavy piece of aluminum. So it's awesome. Sweet. Well, thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it.
Cool.
All right, so Jeff left. He took the body of the complete Supercharger with him because he wants to play with that a little bit more. We took some additional measurements, and what we ended up actually doing off camera was we put 3 carburetors on the top of that, and it looks freaking awesome. I think it would be very cool to make a pad on the top here that you could basically choose if you want to run 1, 2, or 3 carburetors. And I think some of the earlier Superchargers, like the Scotts, Itals and stuff, they kind of had a pad that had a rough opening, and then you would put an adapter plate and do a similar idea. So we were thinking of doing something on this one that was much like that. So because of that, he has to change some of the design work and the shape and everything to see if he can make that work. It's pretty crazy that basically Jeff started out by coming over to the shop. He just took literally, we took with some calipers and some measuring devices and measured roughly this, and Jeff came back like a week or 2 later with the first version of one of these, and then he went through a number of versions, just refining everything and getting to the point where we could actually cast it, and we have the item you see here, which is pretty crazy that it is, came to life with the technology side of things. I'm not as good with that or as familiar, so to see him do all of this was really fascinating, and it is very, very cool. So the one big question that we have is, Jeff started doing that for fun, essentially making all of the pieces, the back section, the center section of the blower, for the idea that would it be worthwhile to go down the path to make our own IronTrap Marshman inspired supercharger. So take some of the things on this maybe we don't like, improve upon them, and put out a kind of one-off supercharger of our own using this sliding vane design. Jeff did warn me that it is very, very expensive to do this process, and I don't know if it's something that's really going to be worthwhile to actually make money on, but it might be something that could be a fun experience to try and make one for ourselves and show the process of actually going from, you know, an idea to making a part that you could put on a vehicle and run. I'm not sure yet. The prices that he was guessing for it are quite expensive, or a lot of money, I should say. But now I understand why some of the reproduction superchargers that you see out there, like the Frenzel, the reproduction Scots, they are so much money because of everything that goes into making them a functioning piece. Not only do we have to design it, we have to cast it, we have to machine it, and then there's consumable parts, like on this particular one, there's bearings, and then there's the sliding vane material, there's a lot, the pulley, there's a lot of stuff that goes on to actually make it ready to bolt on the vehicle. And while it might not be extremely expensive to cast the raw pieces, all the work to get them to a part that you could put on the car and actually use is where it starts to get expensive. I'm not sure if it's going to be worthwhile to do it as far as making a batch of even 5 or 10. I don't know if it's worthwhile. There's enough interest because probably the cost would have to be similar to what you're seeing for the Scots or the Frenzels, where they're in the $7,000, $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 range, just because of how expensive it is to make stuff like that these days. So I may, as a passion project, possibly go down the route of making one because it's going to cost the same money to make one or a bunch of them. I may just do one, and maybe we'll see if there's any interest, but we need to do one regardless if we're even thinking about making multiples, that we can actually put on a vehicle and see if it works and drive the car and make sure that it's not going to self-destruct and wreck someone's engine. So that's kind of what we're thinking with that, and that's what a lot of what Jeff kind of did, that full blower 3D printed design, was kind of to throw that idea to me and see what we could do. But most importantly, we got the missing pieces. We got 3 of these cast. So now what we can do is the other 2 incomplete ones, like this one here, we can now start doing some machining and make this part so that it can actually bolt on. The rotor portion is actually not that difficult because it is basically just a solid round piece of billet aluminum. We can do a slitting saw or whatever method to put the slots for the vanes, and we can do some machine work on it, just basic lathe work to cut that down to size, and then of course just machine this, which is probably almost more time consuming than even doing the rotor portion. So we have a little bit of work, but it'll be a fun thing to get 3 of these back together and replace these missing parts. And this is a lot of the fun of what I have in the hobby, is finding really rare stuff, trying to see if it works, put it back on a car, and also learn about the history of it and how it works along the way. So that's all we have for this one. Hopefully, if you're as nerdy as I am, you enjoyed this video and the process of what we're doing here. And it's been a lot of fun, and I can't wait to see if we can get 3 of these things back together. Thanks, guys. Catch you later.